The man who walked into my office was built like someone who'd never been told no. My name is Adrian Mercer. 44 years old. Insurance executive. The lover stood in my doorway at 2:17 p.m. on a Wednesday with medical records and an ultrasound image, convinced he was delivering a knockout punch. "Your wife is pregnant," he said. "With my child. She wants a divorce." I didn't stand up. Didn't raise my voice. Just smiled and asked coldly, "Divorce?" "Yes. She's willing to make it painless if you cooperate," he continued, pushing the documents across my desk. I gestured for him to sit. He remained standing, confused by my lack of reaction. "My answer is no," I said quietly. His face darkened. "You don't have a choice. The evidence is right here. The courts will." "The courts will do whatever I want them to do," I interrupted. "Because unlike you, I actually understand leverage." He stood there, angry now, ready to threaten. Before he could speak, I made a single phone call. 2 security guards appeared at my office door within seconds. "Remove him," I said. As they escorted him out, he was shouting about lawyers and paternity suits. He had no idea that he just walked into a trap set long before he ever entered this office. Neither did my wife. I sat alone in the silence, understanding finally that the game had already begun, and he'd just lost without realizing we were playing. The lover's name was Marcus Holden. 38 years old. Real estate developer with more money than sense. I spent the next hour researching him, not to understand the affair, but to understand how thoroughly my wife had miscalculated. My wife's name is Elena. 17 years of marriage. 2 children. A life that looked stable from outside, which meant it was already rotting within. But Elena didn't understand something crucial. I've known about Marcus for 8 months. Not suspected. Known. I had a PI following her since March when I noticed the pattern. Late dinners, bathroom phone calls, her body language changing at specific notifications. Most husbands confront immediately. I'm not most husbands. Instead, I documented everything. Photographs. Hotel receipts. Text transcripts. Video footage of them together in Marcus's apartment. Not for emotional validation, I'd stopped feeling anything about her infidelity around month 3. But for leverage. The pregnancy changed nothing fundamentally. I called my lawyer, Thomas Bradford, and had him pull the file I'd prepared 6 months ago. 53 pages of evidence. Time-stamped. Notarized. Legally airtight. Elena's lover just came to my office, I told him. He thinks we're heading for divorce. I want him to think that for exactly 48 more hours. What are you planning? Thomas asked carefully. Something that will destroy his life completely, I said. Without me lifting a finger. By evening, I gathered the children and told them we were having family dinner. Elena arrived home at 6:47 p.m., nervous energy radiating off her like heat. She knew something had changed. I could see it in her eyes, the calculation, the fear, the desperate hope that somehow I still didn't know. Elena tried reading my expression as we sat at the dinner table. I could see her running calculations, assessing whether Marcus had confronted me, whether I knew, whether the affair was about to explode. I let her suffer through uncertainty for exactly 17 minutes. "Kids, go upstairs. Your mother and I need to talk," I said calmly. They left without argument. Children sense when something fundamental shifts. Once the door closed, Elena's composure cracked. "Adrian, I can explain." "You're pregnant," I said. Not a question. Her face went white. "How did you?" "Marcus came to my office this afternoon. Very dramatic. Very confident. He seems to think you want a divorce and that I'll cooperate because of the pregnancy." I leaned back in my chair. "He's also stupid enough to believe you actually told him that." Elena's hands were shaking. "I do want." "No, you don't," I interrupted. "You want the fantasy of Marcus. The excitement. The escape from ordinary life. But you don't actually want divorce. You want me to quietly accept your betrayal while you play house with a man who's already planning how to replace you." "You don't know that," Elena whispered. "I know exactly that." I pulled out my phone and showed her the file. Photographs. Videos. The ultrasound appointment Marcus attended. Text messages where he told his business partner that Elena was convenient but ultimately unremarkable. Elena watched evidence accumulate on my screen. With each image, she seemed to shrink further. "What are you going to do?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "That depends entirely on what you do next," I said. The silence that followed was absolute. I laid out the options with precision of someone who'd spent months preparing for this exact moment. Option 1. You tell Marcus you've reconsidered. That you want to stay in the marriage. You disappear from his life completely, and we proceed as if this affair never happened. Elena stared at me. You take me back. I'm not taking you back, I said coldly. I'm containing damage. You'll stay in this house. Raise this child. But understand that trust is finished. Affection is finished. You're going to live in a marriage that's functionally over while maintaining normalcy for our children. That's cruel, she whispered. Option 2 is worse, I continued. You leave. You go to Marcus. And I release every piece of evidence to his ex-wife, his business partners, his investors. I file for sole custody based on your infidelity. You lose everything, the house, primary custody, your reputation. Elena's face was streaming with tears now. Option 3, I said quietly. You stay in the marriage on my terms. We go to counseling for appearance. You understand that I own you now. Every decision, every person you see, every moment, subject to my approval. You become what you should have been, obedient. Please, Elena said. Don't do this. You did this, I replied. The moment you decided to betray me, you accepted every consequence that follows. So choose. Right now. Which option saves your life as you know it? She didn't answer immediately. Just sat there, understanding finally that she'd married someone far more dangerous than she'd ever imagined. Her hands trembled as she reached for water, couldn't find her voice for almost a minute. Then she chose. Elena chose option 1. Of course she did. She called Marcus that evening while I listened from the other room. Her voice was carefully constructed, regretful, conflicted, but ultimately decisive. She told him she couldn't go through with it. That she'd been confused. That the pregnancy had forced her to confront what she actually wanted, her family. Marcus tried arguing. Tried convincing her. Tried leveraging the pregnancy as a weapon. But Elena had already understood the new rules. She was playing for survival now, not romance. By the next morning, Marcus had hired a lawyer. By afternoon, he'd filed for paternity rights and child support. He genuinely believed he had leverage, that a biological connection would give him standing in my life. He was catastrophically wrong. I called Thomas and gave him clearance to deploy the file. Every photograph. Every video. Every text message documenting Marcus's conversations with his ex-wife about conquests and temporary arrangements. Communications where he'd explicitly stated Elena was just a distraction from work stress. By evening, Marcus's law firm received notice of a defamation lawsuit I was filing. It was technically baseless, but that didn't matter. The lawsuit wasn't designed to succeed. It was designed to make his legal costs astronomical while forcing disclosure of all evidence against him. His ex-wife received copies. His business partners received copies. His investors received copies. The documents came anonymously, but the message was clear: Marcus Holden was a liability. Within 72 hours, he'd lost 2 major real estate deals. His law firm advised him to settle the paternity case immediately and disappear from Elena's life entirely. He chose wisely. The affair was finished. Marcus was destroyed. Elena understood her new position perfectly. Now came the hardest part. The victory was surgical and complete. Marcus withdrew his paternity claim, agreed to financial support paid directly to me, and signed a comprehensive NDA preventing him from ever discussing the affair publicly. He vanished from our city entirely. But the real work wasn't destroying Marcus. That was simple. The real work was managing Elena's existence in the aftermath. She gave birth to a daughter in October. A beautiful child who would grow up believing Adrian Mercer was her father. I let her believe that too, not out of kindness, but because maintaining that fiction served my purposes. The child deserved stability, and Elena deserved to understand exactly what she'd purchased with her infidelity, a life of constant surveillance. I installed monitoring software on her phone. I tracked her location. I required detailed explanations for every appointment, every friend meeting, every moment away from the house. Not out of jealousy, I'd moved past that entirely, but out of a cold need to ensure she never attempted another betrayal. Elena adapted to her new existence with surprising efficiency. She understood that resistance was futile. That I held every card. That her only path to normalcy was absolute compliance. Our social circle never suspected anything. To them, we were the Mercers, the successful couple with 3 beautiful children and a stable marriage. Elena played her role flawlessly. She smiled at dinner parties. She laughed at my jokes. She performed devotion with precision. But in our private moments, there was nothing. No warmth. No connection. Just the quiet understanding that she destroyed something irreplaceable and was now living in the ruins of her own choices. That was the revenge, not explosive, but total. Not violent, but suffocating. Perfect and complete. 3 years after the affair, I ran into Marcus at an airport in Chicago. He didn't recognize me immediately. He'd aged, genuinely aged, like stress had carved itself into his face. When he finally placed who I was, he went pale and walked in the opposite direction without acknowledging me. That moment told me everything I needed to know about the cost of what I'd done to him. He was still afraid. Years later, still afraid. The wound hadn't healed, it had just scabbed over, a permanent reminder of underestimating someone smarter than himself. I felt nothing watching him flee. Elena and I had settled into a rhythm by then. She was a competent mother. A reliable housewife. A woman who'd learned the consequences of betrayal and internalized them completely. But here's what I didn't anticipate: controlling someone completely is exhausting. The monitoring, the restrictions, the constant vigilance, it required maintaining emotional distance that eventually extended beyond Elena to everyone around me. My children sensed it. My colleagues noticed it. I'd become a man so focused on ensuring no one could ever hurt me again that I'd made genuine connection impossible. I was winning every day. But I was losing something I couldn't quite name. One evening, Elena asked if I'd ever forgive her. No, I said honestly. Will you ever stop punishing me? She asked quietly. I considered the question. The truth was, I couldn't stop. Forgiveness would mean accepting vulnerability. It would mean acknowledging that I'd been hurt. And I'd built an entire existence around the principle that admitting pain was weakness. I don't know, I told her. I don't know if I'm capable anymore. She nodded like she'd already understood that answer. A year later, I was sitting in a therapist's office, something I'd never anticipated doing. Not because Elena convinced me, but because I'd finally understood that my victory had become a prison. The therapist asked a simple question: what are you actually trying to protect? I couldn't answer. Not immediately. Because the honest answer was that I wasn't protecting anything anymore. I was just perpetuating punishment. Elena had betrayed me. That was real. The pain was real. The humiliation was real. But somewhere along the way, my response to that betrayal had become more destructive than the betrayal itself. I'd built a life where control was the only currency that mattered, and in doing so, I'd made myself incapable of ever being truly free. I thought about Marcus, broken and afraid in that airport, years after I'd dismantled him. I thought about Elena, diminished and obedient, performing a life rather than living one. And I thought about myself, a man who'd won so completely that there was nothing left to win. The real revenge, I realized, wasn't what I'd done to them. It was what I'd done to myself in the name of protecting myself from ever being hurt again. I made a decision that day. Not forgiveness, I'm not capable of that. But a choice to stop. To release the grip I had on Elena's life. To stop monitoring her. To let her exist as something other than a prisoner in her own marriage. She was shocked when I told her. Genuinely shocked. Like she'd forgotten what autonomy felt like. Why? She asked. Because keeping you captive was never about protecting me, I said. It was about proving I could. And I've proven it enough. Walking away from that need to control, that was the hardest thing I've ever done. Not because I forgave her, but because I finally understood that revenge without mercy isn't victory. It's just a different kind of prison.